Hello out there, and thank you for joining us tonight on Code People's Parliament. We'll be dissecting a number of socio-political issues, including breaking news as they affect the Nigerian people. Tonight, on People's Parliament, we have a couple of five items we want to discuss tonight, and we have joining us on Zoom, Mr. Oyeso Joseph. Mr. Oyeso Joseph, are you available to speak to us? All right. While we await Mr. Oyeso Joseph, I'll be introducing the topic for tonight's discussion. Of course, a number of topics have come up. Yesterday was a very busy day in the history of Africa, particularly West Africa, where there was a military coup in Benin Republic. Our own president, Bola Tinubu, ordered the Air Force to take over the airways. The entire airspace in Benin Republic was taken over by Nigerian Air Force. And that was an abuse of international law. Of course, we'll be dabbling into that as we proceed in this discussion tonight. Also, we'll be taking a look at Patrick's St. Mary's School children adoptions. Of course, we heard on news that 100 school kids were released. We are yet to get a confirmation of the current situation of the remaining school children. We understand that about 3 weeks ago, there was a mass adoption of 315 school kids, including their teachers, where the headmaster was killed in the process. And of course, the Nigerian government is yet to clarify as to the states of these school kids that are still lagging behind in kidnappers' den. The NSA, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Malanu, regarded as come under heavy criticism for his reckless comments that the school children are safe with the kidnappers. Well, we'll continue with our conversation. Tiger Base. Tiger Base has come under heavy scrutiny lately, where Nigerian youths, particularly from Imo states and beyond, are beginning to call for proper investigation of Tiger Base, where a certain police officer and the CSA have been able to have projected themselves as a killer squad, and that has been described as more of a ritual than a police station. So it is on this note that a lot of social media activists have been able to spotlight the killings at Tiger Base, Harry and all that. We've been able to project the happenings at Tiger Base police station, where it has been described as a source of mass ritual going on in Imo states. Of course, the assistant state commissioner of police has been accused of having connivance in this whole matter of Tiger Base killings that has attracted social commentary across Nigeria, particularly in southeastern states, where they are heavily affected by these ugly incidents. Of course, every state government, as usual, has come under heavy criticism for the release of 10 billion naira for Saudi pilgrimage loan. How can a state government as poor as Kebbi State, having over 70% out of school children, will dabble into taking a loan of 10 billion naira just to sponsor our citizens to Saudi Arabia on pilgrimage? Is that a wise decision for any sane government to take, or is it a reckless decision? All this will come into limelight as we proceed in tonight's discussion. Of course, U.S. Congressional fact-finding mission arrived in Nigeria last week. They spent a week where they traveled across the length and breadth of places where they intended to visit and establish facts of the ongoing Christian genocide. Of course, they were seen in Benin State where they visited the Benin State governor as well as other government functionaries, including the NSA, the National Security Advisor. Here, further discussions were held regarding the U.S. intervention and ascertaining the reality behind the ongoing Christian genocide. I believe they would have visited some of these sites of Christian genocide, which include Yelwata, Bokos, Shiroro, and a couple of other locations across Benue, Plateau, Niger, and even Kwara states. It is expected that they are able to visit this location to ascertain the reality of this mass grave that spread across, and of course, see to the plights of these internally displaced persons. Of course, some of these internally displaced persons have been there for the past 13 years without any government response. Tonight, I'll be taking an essay that I've written in response to this Benin Republic coup. Benin Republic coup, the violation of Benin Republic airspace. There's no how you want to put it, whether you are going there to help or otherwise. It is a violation of international airspace of the Benin Republic government and the people, of course. And the danger of unlawful military action. So we're taking a look at the Republic coup, the violation of the international airspace, as well as the danger of unlawful military actions taken against the Republic. And going by it, the deliberate violation of another nation's airspace, particularly through military bombardments, if undertaken by any government, represents one of the most serious breaches of international conduct in the modern world. Such an action shatters the foundational principles upon which peaceful coexistence among sovereign states is built. And in West Africa, where nations are interlinked by history, culture, shared economic destinies, the consequence of unlawful incursion into the airspace of the Republic or other neighboring countries like the Benin Republic, as we are currently witnessing, would be especially destructive both physically and morally. Airspace is more than a physical zone, both a country. It is a symbol of sovereignty, international law, particularly the United Nations Charter has condemned any act of incursion in clear and unequivocal. It is clear and unequivocal no nation has the right to violate another territory's integrity, right? Except under tight defined conditions, such as imminent threats or self-defense. These boundaries undermines the global framework created to prevent war and chaos after the devastation of the 20th century. All right, such an act would not only destabilize diplomatic relations, but also erode the trust that underpins regional cooperation. For West African states, which rely heavily on collaboration through ECOWAS, the country border attack would be not just reckless, but self-sabotage. Of course, the region faces shared challenges. Attack would not just reckless challenges, security threats, economic volatilities, humanitarian pressure. All this can only be addressed through mutual respect and cooperation. The bombardment of the Republic, even in hypothetical contexts, would fracture regional unity and projects an image of Nigeria as a destabilizing force. We understand that Nigeria will have had under the umbrella of trying to restore democracy in the Republic. But then, behind the intention of trying to restore democracy, we all understand that Nigerian president, in person of Mr. Bola Tinubu, is most probably trying to protect the interests of France rather than democracy in quotes. The deployment of military aircraft to the Republic is a clear demonstration of Brazil's strength in the foreign land while failing at home. I mean, you have all this military equipment, all the aircraft that can bombard the coup plotters, but we have not been able to use these aircraft to bombard the terrorists that have taken over the length and breadth of this country, causing insecurity, causing genocide, causing mayhem. As a matter of fact, Nigerians in many communities have left their ancestral land for the past 10 years, and the government is here to move a muzzle. But then, in a twinkle of an eye, they're able to respond to the Republic, whereas within your own geographical setting, you've not been able to achieve anything. That's an embarrassment. And this event has exposed the Bola Tinubu-led administration for being deliberately complicit in fighting terrorism in Nigeria, not because they lack the capacity, but because they lack the political will to execute and end this terrorism. Of course, many have alleged that Bola Tinubu is a beneficiary of insecurity, that he came to power by virtue of the insecurity across Nigeria. It is what has given him some of these sympathy votes from these communities where there are unrest. And how else can one dispel this assertion with what has happened in the Republic? Okay, taking it further, Nigeria growing terrorism and genocide is well documented in global scene. Currently, over 315 St. Mary's school children from Papiri community in Niger State, they are held hostage without any visible government response to tackle the reign of terror in Nigeria. Of course, the MAGA school abduction is another one in Kebbi State. The Eruka CAC Church terror attack in Kwara State. The Ushishi 30 vigilante massacre. 30 vigilantes were massacred overnight in Ushishi local government area in Niger State. The press is not even carrying it. This is unfortunate. Of course, and other terror attacks have shown the complicity of Tinubu-led APC government. The same military fighter jets that are missing in action in Nigeria against terrorists are suddenly available for the bombardment of the Republic beyond the convenience of quote of defending democracy. This is best described as a clear attempt to protect France's interests. Of course, by President Bola Tinubu-led government that have found comfort in France rather than Assad. You know, this is an indictment against the Bola Tinubu-led administration. Oftentimes than not, we have incursion by these terrorists who have even seized many territories in Nigeria. As I speak to you, out of 16 LGA in Kwara State, 10 are already under the control of terrorists. And there is a military barrack in Lorry. They've not been able to respond. Why? Because no order has been given to them. It's very clear. The entire fellow, the biggest local government area in Nigeria, in West Africa particularly, is still under terrorist control. The inhabitants of Ifelodun, they have all fled Ifelodun to Ilori Central, and some have fled to Lagos, Ibadan, and beyond. You know, how can one justify it? In Maga, we had abductions, not just one or two, several abductions. Underreported, unreported adoptions have been taking place in Kebbi State. And the government is here to, make any meaningful response. They will not be able to attack, they will not be able to rescue. Rather, all these are going unnoticed, unreported by the mainstream media, except for individual efforts by social media influencers, as well as corporate organizations who are now deeming it fit to spotlight these areas that have not been covered, to bring it to uh, public attention. Of course, in Niger State is another peculiar state where we have in Shiroro alone over 10 wards have been taken over out of 15 wards. If 10 out of 15 are already in the hands of kidnappers, terrorists, of course, what are we talking about? That is land grabbing. They can no more return to their communities. For the past 13 years, we've had programs where we have interviewed victims of this terrorism who are now living in IDP camps. Majority of the women lamented that their husbands have been killed by these terrorists. So this is a sad reality of Nigeria, where we have in Benue State as well, the entire Wada community, where we have over 200 persons killed overnight, including children and women. The government did not move a muscle, right, to go after these terrorists. But they suddenly find their strength in going after terrorists in going after coup plotters in the Republic, violating international law. How else can we describe complicity? How else can we describe protection of France's interests in Nigeria? How else can we describe that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has proven to the world that is a puppet to the French President Emmanuel Macron? Of course, we are even in Plateau State, where we have endless terror attacks. People are being killed on a daily basis. Pastors, reverends are being slaughtered without the government moving a muscle. All of a sudden, they find their strength. All this is a justification that Nigeria as a country is under siege. My guest on Zoom, Mr. Joseph, do you have any contribution on this subject matter? The mic is open if you want to contribute so that I can unmute and speak. Mr. Joseph, are you available to speak? All right, whenever you're available, you can just unmute. I will give you the time to have your contribution. Also in Tiger Base, all the way at Imo State, where there have been silent ritual going on, unreported. Persons are arrested. There are several raids that were made. People were arrested and taken to Tiger Base without coming out alive. And nobody has investigated until lately when the matter resurfaced on social media, particularly on X, where individuals spotlighted these events. So what are we talking about? The Nigerian police need to explain to the world what's happening at Tiger Base, at Imo State, to be precise. It's very, very inhuman to have. There was a case where someone reported, gave the eyewitness account how his brother was arrested, taken to Tiger Base. 3 days later, he was dead. And the police did not provide any meaningful explanation. Right? This is an indictment on the Nigerian police force to be able to come out clean and set up an independent panel of inquiry to investigate all the killings that have been taking place in Tiger Base, all the mortuary attendants that are responsible or linked to these Tiger Base killers that are pretending to be policing. This cannot continue to happen in the 21st century, where we're supposed to have a very decent society. We cannot afford to allow our citizens to be killed without any form of investigation, without any law taking its course. This cannot continue. Also in Kebbi State, Kebbi State has been ranked as the highest in terms of poverty, the highest in having out-of-school children. There is nothing wrong in taking a loan so long as such loans are taken for productivity, right? Taking a loan to fund Saudi trade is unimaginable. It is confusion for any state government to go into taking a loan just to sponsor our citizens to Saudi Arabia, then return back to poverty. Why not use this money to lift your citizens out of poverty? Social capital investment is key. If you invest on them and they're able to emancipate themselves from poverty, they'll be able to decide to take a trip to Saudi Arabia on their own without being sponsored. But taking a loan of 10 billion naira just to sponsor members or citizens of the state to Saudi Arabia is unimaginable. And the Kebbi State government, the same Kebbi State has failed to provide adequate health facility for her people, is now suddenly finding the need to go and take a loan just to sponsor trip to Saudi Arabia. And Kano State is throwing the same path. This cannot continue. This is not the way to come up with a decent society. This is not the way to come up with a society that will be able to confront poverty and overcome challenges of poverty. We've had easy recruitment for terrorists. How will it end if we continue in this direction? We continue to allow all forms of wastages. This is wasted government funds, wastage taken too far. We cannot continue to waste scarce resources and expect growth. Every state lacks basic amenities, lack of water, lack of housing, lack of medical facilities, lack of basic schools. Yet you are using this whole 10 billion naira, not even your own act of productivity, but the loan that you've taken to go and sponsor your state indigenes to Saudi Arabia. How will that affect their life economically? How will that improve their social status? How will that lead to their independence economically, financially? These are questions we need to ask. Right? On this note, I will take a look at the US Congress. They arrived in Nigeria, of course, like I said earlier, they spent a week, which they have made several visitations. And the Bishop Association in Makurdi, they declined the invitation to State Government House. Of course, the reason is not far-fetched. The state governor, I seen earlier, has since denied that there is no any form of Christian genocide in Benin State. So how do you expect the victims of this Christian genocide to go and visit and be part of any negotiation or discussion? They declined the invitation until the Congress delegation paid them visits and heard their own side of the story. So that is the way to go. If the government has chosen politics over human lives, then they have to be left alone to decide the politics for themselves. And it's good that they are able to withstand their ground and tell their own side of the story from their base, their church premise, without going to the government house. So further discussions surrounding the Christian genocide will be unveiled as time goes on. But of course, we understand that the US government has real out conditions for collaborating with the Nigerian government in the war against terror in Nigeria, in the war against genocide in Nigeria. One of it is that they have given condition that the Sharia law is the source of Christian genocide in Nigeria. And all forms of terrorism, it has to go as condition, precondition. Part of the condition is some Nigerian officials have been accused of funding terrorism are not going to be part of any engagement with the US forces or the US mission in Nigeria, which we saw the Minister of Defense has resigned as of last 2 weeks, which led to the emergence of the new Minister of Defense, the person of the former CDS, Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of Army Staff, rather. There are Christopher Musa, who is now in charge of Defense Ministry. He's now the Minister of Defense. We wish him well. We want to see a situation where there will be improvement in security, improvement in territorial integrity, improvement in all forms of aggression, to be able to nip it before it escalates. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for holding forth until this moment. I remain Mr. Arthur Christian Ochen. It's a pleasure to have you. We look forward to having you another day. Thank you for joining, and God bless you. Bye-bye.